Ungawodwa bayemini iyakoyika mpetha wathunanje Ungawodwa iyakoyika mpetha wathunanje
Ndisezinzulwini zosizi sendisezinzulwini zosizi zaphala inyembezi ndilindile sukundishalazela ndinjenguwe sondela sibambane sukundoyika thetha wathulanje amaphupho ami ngawe busuku ndinde wasithandwa mina ukube nisitya ingongo sondela sibambane sibambane sondela sishifuzane sithandane khawuleza ndilindile ndiphendule thetha wathula nje
As I woke up one morning, just thinking of the night before. We were dancing in a club in Kingston Town, yeah, sweating till the break of dawn. Summer vibe was heated, her body on the dance floor. This girl was something different, yes she was. Reached out to me and held me close. Oh, whispered to me all the time. Good night. And oh, but you understand to hold me tight. Oh, whispered to me all the time. Good night. And oh, but you understand to hold me tight. So the DJ from the party, he was spinning all her favorite jazz. We stayed until 4:30, yes we did. Headed straight to her penthouse. Ooh, I caressed the velvet body, gave her everything a woman wants, a woman needs. We both felt something special, you know we did. A night of wonder, a night of peace. Ooh, whisper till all the time. Good night. And oh, but you are to me. Strangely happy where I am, yet wonder what could be. It's not a case of needing more or wanting to be free. I could go and just explore, sail the seven seas. Know that I'd find nothing more, come back on my knees. If I stay, she goes. If I go, she'll stay. But then if I go, she'll probably leave anyway. No way I can win. If I win, I lose. But then if she wanders, she'll be wearing out my shoes. She'll be wearing out my shoes. She'll be wearing out my shoes. What I need is here now. That's what's good for me. Keep me always guessing. Call me unexpectedly. Like the fire warm inside, flowing from within. Together now we could go far. Together traveling. If I stay, she goes. If I go, she'll stay. But then if I go, she'll probably leave anyway. No way I can win. If I win, I lose. But then if she wanders, she'll be wearing out my shoes. She'll be wearing out my shoes. She'll be wearing out my shoes. Ba da 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 da, 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 ba da 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 da. If I stay, she goes. If I go, she'll stay. But then if I go, she'll probably leave anyway. The way I can win. If I win, I lose. But then if she wanders, she'll be wearing out my shoes. Strangely happy where I am, yet wonder what could be. It's not a case of needing more or wanting to be free. I could go and just explore, sail the seven seas. I know that I'd find nothing more, I'd come back on my knees. If I stay, she goes. If I go, she'll stay. But then if I go, she'll probably leave anyway. No way I can win. If I win, I lose. But then if she wonders, she'll be wearing out my shoe. If I stay, she goes. If I go, she'll stay. But then if I go, she'll probably leave anyway. No way I can win. If I win, I lose. But then if she wonders, she'll be wearing out my shoe. Been wearing out my shoe. You've been wearing out my shoe. You've been wearing out my shoe. You've been wearing out my shoe. Wearing out my shoe. Wearing out my shoe.
Coca-Cola Craving Week is where heroes are born.
Tell some cool beats like this kind of bit.
There goes the speedster. Still going. And what a try.
You know, we play for a lot, but you, the people of South Africa, our number one motivation.
So, Chester, yeah. How did you feel?
As a book myself, I always tell the guys, I say, guys,
Enjoy the great taste of Coca-Cola and you could join the Springbok squad.
guys.
Doing something like this with my son and for my son it's a dream come true. You know, it's what dreams are made of.
There are moments in life when time
slows down. And the greatest challenge is rising above the noise. Your noise and theirs.
Right. Then can you deliver?
Imagine if just by catching your breath, you could finally breathe.
But never got the ball to know I'm making it easy. Boys, focus op je werk, right? Krijg jezelf in zoveel battles als mogelijk. Come on, boys, huh? Let's go. Know your job, do your job.
Get yours.
Da 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 da. 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 Asibule emuba adiga fundi oyola la desafundu mamela ngomezi mnandi adiga fundi Odapan mamele, angulom nandi ayamalala, nagazitimele, singaka wamanda. Odapan mamele, angulom nandi ayamalala. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da.
on. No, it's not. Ah, there we go. Good evening. Why not? But we need to change the music up a little bit, please, just to make it a little bit more, think more vibe, think more Cape Town, think more 80s, 90s, no 2000s, please. Just for today. But welcome and thank you so much for joining us. It is absolutely fantastic to see so many of you joining us again today, which for me, I always say is one of the best places to be, the best conferences that South Africa ever produces, because it is specially designed to make sure that you gain so much value, not only from the panelists, but the fact that we provide a space for everyone in the retail space to connect and to just create magic and to find the hope in what we need to build for South Africa. So I really want to say thank you so much for joining us today. And the theme for the conference for today is agility at the speed of change, defining tomorrow. So the last couple of days, I'm starting to think, what's happening? Every other year we've got major things to announce, from when we started with COVID and then we had the riots and then we had the floods, and what do we have now? There's so many things that are just coming and going, and it starts to feel like a blur. Even Trump is starting to feel like a blur. The other day I'm interviewing Jamin, an economist, and I'm interviewing him on AGOA coming to an end, so I'm so excited. I'm up there and, AGOA is coming to an end. I'm just waiting for the next thrill. Must I be honest about what he said? He said, that's the thing with you media people. You like to blow things up more than what they actually are. It's actually not that major of a deal. And he says this on live television. And I just held myself and just nearly burst out laughing because he's so right. So many of the things that we think are so major, they're going to change things. We've got Trump policies. He says, Trump policies don't affect most of us. Like, it's such a small sector that it affects. So he took the air out of me a couple of days ago, and I'm still trying to recover. But what we will not ever have the challenge of doing is to grow the economy of South Africa. That is, as simple as it is, that's probably the biggest job we have. And we here sit at feeding the economy, changing the economy, and building the economy. And that's what we're doing today. We're defining tomorrow. And so maybe it's not that complicated. Maybe it's not that, newsworthy. It's not that delicious. It is what we do. And we're going to do it. And we're going to do it really well. So today, come with us. We're going to still be agile at the speed of change, and we are going to make sure that we are defining a very different tomorrow. For us, agility is about transcending boundaries to really moving towards becoming a strategic imperative in the economy. And for us, it involves empowering the sector real time with real solutions, reimagining supply chains, and looking at how to be resilient and responsive. And if there's ever a sector that's trained to do this, it's our sector. So we welcome you. We are looking and anticipating a lot of the content that's coming through. Some of it is going to be really interesting, and some of it you're going to have to sit through and really think about how we use some of the complexities of our environments to make a tangible change. So come with for the ride. We are going to start off with a very interesting conversation, and very glad to say that this year we're having the CEO of CGCSA to come and host the very first conversation with Gareth Cliff. And I think this probably sets the tone and sets the scene for the remainder of the day. How do we contextualize all of this? So Gareth, please come on stage. Zintle, I need you to set the context and help us to understand what it is that we need to keep on top of mind as we go through the day. I can see Gareth coming up, and there's Zintle coming up. Shall we give them a round of applause and warmly welcome them?
Thank you, Zanele. Oh, now we're vocal. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the CGCSA Annual Summit. I said to my sister, I'm going to go and say, welcome. I'm doing just that. So thank you so much for coming here and taking time out of your busy schedule. I'm so excited to be here with Gareth. He's my chairperson, and you all know who he is. So Gareth, we just thought, let's have just like an in-depth, truthful, honest conversation about our industry, where we're seeing our organization going, and your thoughts in terms of where you want us to move ahead as an association and bringing our members together. So, Garrett, tell me, what are your thoughts about where are we as an organization and where do you want to see us in the next couple of years?
Well, thank you, Sinclair. Is this working? Yeah. Sinclair, thank you very much. And thank you for inviting me. And as usual, not giving me any chance to prepare. In fact, I have absolutely no idea what's coming. And so we'll have to see how it goes. So I was just saying earlier on, when I first got involved with CGC many years ago, the summit was in this room, and it's nice to see it back here again.
Yeah.
In fact, I was persuaded to become the chair in that back corner over there. But we've come a long way since then. And I think where this industry is, where we are today, is that we're dealing a lot with technology. And if we look at where CGC is going and with the huge push and involvement with GS1 globally and locally, and how that's becoming a key part of South Africa industry, it's becoming part of the region, and we're more and more involved within the region in the technology and driving technology. It's also dealing with the issues, the food safety issues, and how we're going to deal with those, and particularly food security, because food security in Africa and in South Africa is becoming an increasingly critical area. So many people cannot afford to feed their families. And so it's our duty as the industry to find ways of feeding people in a cheap way, in a way that they can afford, because that really is what's going to drive a lot of the political pressure that's facing this country. Another area is how are we going to deal with the fundamental shifts in the, for want of a better term, the supply chain. And it's the macro supply chain. It's from the suppliers, distributors, retailers, and the split between formal and informal. Because increasingly, as people are struggling more, there's a lot more move towards informal retailers, and that comes down to the food safety issue, is how do we make sure that when it's going through the informal channels, people are getting safe food at the right price and the right quality. And so all of those issues, I think, are something that we at the CGC are critical in helping get that conversation going. And then the final point would be making sure that we have the conversations with the relative people in control of the regulations, within government, within the various regulatory bodies. Because if we don't do that, we cannot get that thing working smoothly. Yeah. And I think that's what you and your team are doing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Gary, you're talking about informal and formal retailing or wholesaling. And also there's an independent retailer aspect to that. So what are your thoughts? Because as you said, the shift is more for people who are struggling to have insecurity with regards to food. They're shifting to informal. How do you make sure, because of the food issues that you've talked about from a safety perspective, how do you make sure that we are able to bring these informal retailers into the mainstream where they understand the regulations that governs such thing as food safety, food nutrition, and the likes?
But I think one of the first areas is going to be, we've now got a representative of the independent wholesalers sitting on our board. And we need to include more and more of those independent wholesalers within a desk, for want of a better term, within CGC to actually start talking about the issues, because it's those people who actually are responsible for it. I remember, and it was a horrible, horrible story many, many years ago, when we had Score supermarkets. And I remember getting the most terrible call one day, was saying two kids had opened a can of Score Pilchards and they died. Now, what had happened was that we'd sent the Pilchards to the Johannesburg municipality for destruction. Somehow it slipped out, and somehow these kids got them and they ate it. Now, we've got to make sure that those supply chains are there and that the standards are there. So it's working with the local authorities. It's working with the health departments to make sure things are happening. You saw what happened last year when we had these kids who effectively ate rat poison, but they bought it from a spaza shop because there weren't the proper health controls. It's that stuff that needs to be happening. And formal retailers, obviously, we watch this really, really carefully. But it's up to the local authorities and government to make sure that they have the controls in place that people are not being exposed on those food safety type issues. And it's also then up to the informal suppliers. It's the independent wholesalers making sure that the quality that they sell is the right quality for the people, so we're not going to get those food safety issues. Because the last thing we want as an industry is government trying to clamp down further, because we've got so much regulation and so much control in already. Government's response to a lot of these issues is to put more regulations or to put more rules in place rather than to put the policing in place. And we want the policing to happen, not more rules.
Yeah. Good thing that you touch on the regulatory issue. From a policy and regulation framework and the environment that you are in South Africa, what is it that you like to see changing?
That's a very broad question. Do you want to tighten it up a bit?
To tighten this regulation so that they can be geared for economic growth and industry growth, so that industry can have more opportunities to bring more entrepreneurs into the sector. What are your thoughts around that?
As I've just said, I think we've got enough rules, we've got enough regulations, we've got enough controls in place. What we need is enforcement. So what we need is government at all levels to start enforcing. You know, as a country, we don't get involved in the industry on the political level because the people who work in our industry, who shop in our stores, who support every single political party, our role is to make sure that we influence policy of the government of the day. And I think we do a really good job at that. And you've got a whole team that's working on that. What we need to be saying we need to see enforcement. We need to see consequences to people who are blatantly breaking the rules. And those consequences need to happen right at the top. You know, it's all very well having a Zondo commission. We've got other new commissions all in place, and they make all sorts of recommendations, and nothing happens. And that's what we've got to see happening more in this country, is consequences to people breaking rules, breaking the laws, because that way you'll get the country going. And by doing that, we'll get economic growth, because what this country really needs is economic growth. We haven't had it for 10, 15 years. And there's been lots of good talk and a lot of political issues, but unless we get some real good policies in place that is going to spearhead growth into the economy, I'm not sure that we're going to get where we need to go as a country. And I think that to me is the key.
Employment. I mean, we know the stats in South Africa from an employment perspective, and this sector, FMCG sector, is always viewed as having the capacity to employ. And I totally agree with that, because we can employ highly skilled and low skilled people into the sector. So how do we make sure that I know that definitely we're doing a lot more as a sector, but so that it can be seen, because we find that government regulators are saying that we are not doing enough. How else do you think, for the visibility of the work that we're doing, can we show as an industry?
I think the issue is training and development. I think we are the largest employer as an industry now within South Africa. But we do not have a really strong relationship, for example, with the unions, where it's still very adversarial. Instead of working together as to how can we make the pie bigger, it's often the reverse. And we've got to find ways of working with the unions, with the different labor organizations to make it to grow the pie and to get more people employed. The second area is that we need to use education and training. And I'm really pleased with the relationships that we have with the CETAs, because I think this is one of the only industries that actually works with the CETA. And I was delighted when you told me. At first I thought, oh, she's trying to duck out of work into something else. When Sinclair's been appointed as the interim chair of the WNR CETA, And what that really is saying is that the industry body and the CETAs are now working together to grow training, development, and to make sure that the money that we as business are paying into these CETAs is actually being properly used to build people, to build development. You know, as Pick and Pay, we were short of butchers and blockmen and what have you. Now we worked with the CETA, and there's a whole program happening now to train and develop people for the industry in be blockmen, be it bakers, be butchers, because by doing that, we can then have better people and better quality people in our stores, and people earn more.
I know we didn't talk about this one because my thought in terms of how the education system in South Africa has shifted, you're talking about blockmen, tenant feeders, it has shifted from apprenticeship to more academic. How do we shift it back to be industry driven rather than and occupational driven, rather than just all our children wants to get into matric, want to get into university? How do we, what is it that you think, as I'm an interim chair, I think let's underline that I'm an interim chair of the WNR CETA, how do we then be able to influence and convince government to say the whole, in my mind, whole educational system needs to change, to shift back to say, when kids get to like grade 9 or standard 7 in my time, we need to have different pipelines. What are your thoughts on that?
That is a government policy issue, and I think we do need to fix it. I think one of the biggest mistakes that the ANC government made in the early days was basically getting rid of a lot of the technical colleges, the teachers training colleges, but particularly the apprenticeship systems. And we need to get back to those apprenticeship systems, because that's how you develop people. And I think in the era of AI, I was in the States last week, 2-3 weeks ago, and I was in New York and I was in Los Angeles, and I was absolutely blown away at the use of AI and the way it's being used in the system. And, you know, I got into a car in LA with a friend of mine, with a business colleague of mine, and he hired the car, and it was a Tesla. And he says to the car, please take us to the hotel wherever we were staying. It's about an hour and a half's drive away. And we got in. He had to keep his hands near the wheel, but the car literally took us there. He didn't have to drive, and I was sitting next to him, and the car drove itself there. Now, if you just extrapolate that into where we are in Africa today, you know, there are two worlds. You know, you've got this world of high tech and AI and changes, and you've got the world where you've got undereducated people. And with Africa's population doubling in the next 20, 30 years, what are those people going to do? Because a lot of them are not going to be skilled enough to move into that high tech space. And we're seeing, and I was chatting briefly to Jasanelli earlier, was you're looking at the change in payment types. So what's that going to do to the banks? And people are now starting to make payments outside the banking systems. Now, people are going to have to drive that. But those are not the people who you were talking about, who are standard 7, 8, 9, who've had a poor education. What are they going to do in the future? And that's going to create a lot of the dissatisfaction, political unrest across Africa. And you're already seeing the migrants and the refugees going out of Africa trying to get into Europe. You look at the invasion across from France into the UK, where 1,000, 2,000 people a day sometimes are trying to cross in boats just to come from these third world countries into the first world countries. And that's going to exacerbate itself. And we're going to have to work on how do we deal with it. We're seeing huge influxes of refugees coming into South Africa. And how do we absorb them into our local economy? The answer is not to send people home. The answer is how do you grow the economy to make it bigger? And so we've got a space for everybody.
Thank you. Last one, Gareth. Institutions like us, the CGCSA and other institutions where there's trust, industry trust, and we have a reputation, and we're seeing things that are happening in our country. corruption and the likes. And if we do keep quiet, what are your thoughts on that? To say, why do we, I think it's more like a reason why. I think we need to share that why we need to be more vocal. Why do we need to hold government accountable? Why do it, what are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are very simple on this one. Government works for us. We don't work for government.
Mm.
So government's there to help make our life work better. We pay taxes. We trust them to do what we need to make sure that our systems work, that our roads work, that the potholes are fixed, that we've got water, that we've got electricity, that the pollution on the side of the road is cleaned up. Those are key issues, which are just everyday maintenance issues. And that's what we want. That's what we want government for. And they must do that basic.
Yeah.
And their job then is to grow the economy and to put the framework in place so that business can get involved and grow the economy. Yeah. Government can never grow economies. Government people do generally are bureaucrats. A big part of my degree when I was at university was public administration. So I actually studied this.
Yeah.
I worked out I could never be a government person. But the point is that we need to have them and
Yeah.
we need to have the process. But we've also got to separate very carefully what the role of government versus the role of the politicians.
Mm.
Governments are there to serve. The politicians are there to get the policies in place. And we need to make sure that we separate the two out and we hold people responsible for what they're supposed to be doing. And that we pay them a lot of money to do.
Yeah. Thank you, Gareth. I think our time is up and he's around. You can ask him questions if you want to. He's going to be here the whole day today. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Sinclair. And
Yeah.
really, I'd just like to congratulate you and Bridget and the whole team for putting together this summit, as always. It's really turning into quite an institution. And I think what really I'm proud of is the work that you guys are doing, which is making CGC the go-to organization in South Africa. Increasingly, when there's a problem, government comes to CGC in this space. How can we fix it? The other industry organizations are coming to us and saying, how can you help us get it fixed? Business Against Crime, and I see AB just walked in the front there.
Okay.
We've got the whole crime initiative, which is really helping keep crime under control. And I think that is really under your leadership and direction. And we've just got to keep it growing and making sure it makes more of a difference.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Gareth. Thank you. Sorry, I'm still going to be on stage, ladies and gentlemen. Responsible for the next panel, I've got three beautiful ladies that are going to join us. I've got Helen McDougall, who's the CEO of Woodlands Dairy. Please come through, Helen. I've got Totsi Mamemela, sorry if I say, who's a strategist and a leader and an influencer. And I've got Zolega Lisa, who's an executive from SAB. He's a VP Corporate Affairs from South African bureaus. I'm not sure if Mr. Mkwanazi is here. I've got him. I said three beautiful ladies and a gentleman. Shouldn't I be sitting at the edge? Tom Mkwanazi is the former CEO of WRCTA. He's going to join this nice panel on leadership. So our panel is going to be talking about leadership, what defines leadership, and how are these beautiful people here with me have navigated the leadership roles in their lives, and how did they get here? The aim is just to make sure that we inspire all of us to go out there and motivate young people and get them into the, I have different generations and different people who have gone through different aspects of their leadership journey, and here today we just want to get that in mind. So initially I was intentional about having women, and then Tom came in, and I needed to say, because we want to make sure that women leaders come through, lifted and are seen as as we navigate this world as people. But Tom, you're welcome. So I think for me, just to open the conversation, ladies and gentlemen, and just so that we can get this out of the way, how do you see agility from a technical and operational perspective, so that how do you see it in your organizations? How have you seen it come through? How have you seen it growing? And from a cultural, people and the ways of work, how have you seen that? What is it, and how have you been able to pivot and make these decisions when you have to be agile? I'll start with you, Zoe, there at the corner.
Firstly, thank you, Zinhle, for the opportunity, and good morning, everyone. We are a beer business, a big beer business. We are highly agile. I think in terms of our company's purpose, we often say that we dream big to create a future with more cheers. So this concept of agility is quite close to our hearts, but I have a difference of opinion sometimes. I think, being fast, agile is all good, but also be mindful and have the discipline to know when to pause and reflect. Going quite quickly in the wrong lane as a leader is not what we need right now. And I think sometimes, specifically when you're very much consumer facing, you can find yourself getting caught up in this rat race of next fast, first advantage and the like. And are you taking a step back, reflecting enough? And some of the things we do is ensuring that we have challenges in the room. It's so refreshing to have a voice of someone who says, but wait a minute, have you thought? Or I disagree because. So definitely we are agile, we pivot quite a bit, but I think we're taking a lot of time to make sure we are disciplined in how we do it.
Thanks. Tom?
Thank you, Zinhle. As a person that works for government, I'm not sure whether that really applies to us. Because we operate in a regulatory environment. I think Gareth has already mentioned that. People talk about thinking outside the box. In public sector, you have to think within the box. See how you
navigate
within that kind of an environment that is regulatory. The tendency, and I think from my leadership journey, is that the tendencies and the temptation is people tend to entangle themselves more on regulations rather than to entangle themselves more than because there's fear. The biggest issue in public sector is that we are under scrutiny. Everyone is looking at us. If I make a mistake, everyone knows about it. When I shared with the board once and I said, in Companies Act, there is nothing called irregular expenditure. And the board was quite shocked. But people in private sector make mistakes constantly. However, in public sector, you've got irregular expenditure and it gets exposed and it's put in the financial statements. Now, how then do you deal with that particular situation where your audit process is not, it's rule-based, not outcome-based? It's got nothing to do with the outcome. So we can all go through the window. If I happen to not go through the window and I went through the door when I was supposed to go to the window and the outcome is still the same, I'm in trouble for that. So you therefore constantly have to think about, as a leader in this particular environment, how do you entangle yourselves within this big regulatory beast, I call it, for you to be really able to and that's what you, myself as a leader, constantly I had to do. The success of the WNR CETA since 2019 to today is purely on the basis of the fact that we had to sit down and I had to work with people in my team to say, how do we ensure that we entangle ourselves, move ourselves within this box of this big environment. So that's, I think, the biggest issue from a leadership point of view, and from an agility point of view. And this CETA in particular was really faced with a lot of issues. We had looting, we had floods, we had COVID-19, we had what you call
July 2021.
July 2020. And as a SETA, we had to move quickly. Last year, we had issues of food safety. We had to, every time, had to think quickly, how do we respond? Because we are not servicing ourselves, we are servicing the industry. So how do we think within this box to ensure that we are able to do what we're supposed to do? So I think that's the work that we're supposed to be doing. You know, I was hearing yesterday how a minister was made to sign a document. So it means when you are a leader in this environment, you must constantly be ahead of time, thinking about if people are bringing a document to me, is it within the legislation?
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
Sisters.
Thank you very much. It's really an honor and privilege for me to be part of this process. Unlike the young lions and lionesses that we have here, I've been around. So I've worked both for the private and public sector, and I've seen both worlds. I've also worked in the development space for quite a long time and also in the education space. I think what I find as a challenge, particularly in the education space, is when we talk about agility, is also the issue of rules. For example, the organization that I serve on a board of, we provide technology to universities so that they can adapt quickly and be able to do what needs to be done and address the number of students that we have that don't have access to education. Believe it or not, prior to the time when we had COVID, government allowed universities to do that. No sooner was COVID over, they said, no, go back to square one and work through the process of accrediting each and every program. How then the fact that we have a whole range of people that are unemployed. We have a whole range of people that are educated. They are desperate now. But again, I think the best approach in terms of navigating this is to form partnerships, to make sure that we speak to each other, we cooperate with each other. I mean, the time when I was serving in SASA, when we were stuck and we didn't know how to pay people, guess what we did? And Gareth was still just saying, we came to the retailers. We tried the post office, it didn't work. We came to the retailers, we said,
CGCSA.
We've got all these millions of people that actually need to be paid. So through the Consumer Goods Council, whom we sit with now, and the industry as a whole, we're now able to cooperate, also to look at how do we do things differently using technology for us to make sure that much as we empower our people, we also are ensuring that we're providing them the right solutions in terms of what can be done.
Interesting. Helen, your thoughts on agility and
Yeah, thank you, Zintle.
the shift? Yes.
I think I'll approach your question from two perspectives. The first is really a personal perspective, and I think agility has become a little bit of a buzzword because it's not new. It's something that we live with every single day and something that we respond to in business all the time. I think where I see it slightly different is that agility to me doesn't just mean rapid response. It doesn't just mean about moving fast. Agility means, considering different perspectives, consulting outside of your norm. That's all agility. It's how do we do things differently that give us that edge to move faster. So it's not just about making, really quick decisions and moving. It's about doing things differently.
Yeah.
So that would be the personal reflection. I mean, if I reflect on the industry, and I'm in the dairy industry, which is a really traditional industry. It's governed by a lot of norms and how we do things and how we've always done things. And I think agility in terms of that sense needs to look at trends and how do you move. But I really agree with Soleka in terms of not just moving and being agile and fast for whatever's on the table and whatever on trend and whatever, the new fad is. We really need to look at it and understand what is going to make a difference, what's going to set us up for the future, and be careful not to be, I suppose, going after all those quick short-term wins at the expense of real long-term gains and sustainability. So that would be my take on it.
Yeah, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I think that it's giving us some insights in terms of where do we need to redefine and say, you know what, when. I think what I'm taking away is like, it's not always the best, but also we need to be able to evaluate and say, okay, now do I move fast? Do I move slow? Do I bring more people out? How do we change? I mean, I think Sister, you touched on that. Helen, as we define tomorrow, what are the key non-negotiable for yourself, for ethical, inclusive, and for a sustainable transformation future for us?
Yeah.
What do you see?
And obviously we've spoken about this, and
Yeah.
it's been something that I've been considering for a while, but I think there are some principles that really need to be upheld through any transformation that anybody goes through. And within those principles, there are really some non-negotiables that if not adhered to, it can make a big difference. So one of the non-negotiables for me would be all around ethical leadership and governance. Because I think leaders need to really demonstrate integrity, transparency, and accountability in everything they do. So decision-making processes within organizations, within transformations, whatever the case may be, need to be clear to everybody. And I think ethical standards need to be enforced within organizations so that, again, everybody's very clear on what those are. And then leaders can really make sure that, you know, they promote this culture and this behavior where adherence to those standards are rewarded in some way and misconduct is not tolerated. Another, you know, non-negotiable would be the route of inclusion and diversity, where we're actively allowing alternate voices and opinions to come across across all dimensions of diversity, and to ensure that there's participation in the transformation. I think this really fosters a culture of collaboration, fosters a culture of belonging, and makes people, I suppose, adopt the transformation or the changes a lot wider, and also implement a lot quicker because they feel there's ownership in it for them. Another non-negotiable for me would be engaging stakeholders and collaboration. Obviously, I think across all industries, it's really, really important to bring your partners, and whoever that might be, is whether it be your shareholders, your board, your exco, your staff, your external partners, suppliers, whatever the case may be, is bring them along, engage them, bring them along on the process, but take some of that feedback that you're getting from them and include it in your transformational strategies, because that's where some of the real goal, where the essence sits. So I think that's really important, and not only once and upfront. I mean, you know, we talk about communication. It needs to be throughout the process, also keeping them updated in terms of how's it going, how we're tracking, what are some of the obstacles we're facing into. Another non-negotiable, and this is quite a personal one for me, is all around environmental responsibility. I think any transformation nowadays, wherever you are, whatever your organization does, transformation needs to minimize negative environmental impacts as much as possible and promote sustainability. So some of those non-negotiables should be things like, you know, resource efficiency, reduction of waste, protection of biodiversity, and also just support for climate action. So I think, you know, ethical, inclusive and sustainable transformation requires commitment to a number of non-negotiables, and these are just a few of them. But if we make sure that they are included in our thinking and in every step of the process, we can make sure that transformation is really impactful.
Thank you for that, Helen. Stotsi, you've led in different across sectors, and what are the key lessons that you've learned from a developmental finance perspective, social security, that are more relevant for private sector today?
I thought it was interesting when the chairman actually indicated the issue of the challenges that we currently have in the country. The fact that we have more and more vulnerable people that cannot put food in the table, actually from the development space, the key issues that one always finds there is that the product is always close to the person they serve, to the customers that they actually serve. So more and more in the development space, you find that people are customer centric in terms of serving the customers. When I was in the credit environment where we provided loans to women specifically, we had to get to a point where we're providing a loan for 500 rands. And one would ask a question, what do you do with 500 rands? But if you are a woman who is making sure that your children are fed, it doesn't take a lot for you if you've got basic skills for you to be able to do something and be able to serve people in your community. So being customer centric is going to be critical for this particular sector. The other issue is when we look at infrastructure, we need to go beyond thinking, I need a big store because the big store will be able to provide support for everybody at the same time. But in certain instances, which is what I believe the industry has actually done, is to get closer and closer to the people that we serve there without replacing, for example, the whole issue that is argued on is replacing spaza shops. How do we not necessarily replace them, but provide service to them to ensure that because they're closer to the people, they can serve people with smaller items that are close to them, but also teach them on the issue of safety, because safety is becoming quite a huge challenge. So what I've learned is being customer centric, making sure that even when you introduce technology, you introduce it slowly by taking your people with, so that you can make sure that nobody is left behind in the process of doing what you need to do as a business. I think that for me, those are the learnings that I've had.
Thank you. And from a social security perspective, your thoughts there? I mean,
I think for the social security perspective, for me, it's been, since COVID was a gift. For us, COVID was a gift, despite the challenges. It was a gift in a sense that we're forced to think outside the box. Because all along we thought we can pay people under the trees, and we then recognized the fact that we didn't have a choice. People needed to eat at a particular time when there was nothing. All the industries were closed. We therefore needed to work with the whole value chain, the people that provide the money, the people that can actually service our customers. But also what I really, really appreciated is how this industry has come forth in terms of providing support for our customers, particularly for abogogo nabomkhulu. I mean, we found a situation where during winter, you'd find that people are actually fed in some of the retail shops because they knew that the people would have woken up very early in the morning. But the key issue is partnerships and continuous dialogue. Because we speak to each other every month, we know who's doing what, and whenever there are changes, we talk to each other about what changes need to happen. And again, I think it's the issue of engaging government better in terms of making sure that we actually push the lever in terms of what government needs to do to come to the party, also as we partner in this relationship.
Thank you. Zolega, I'll come to you. I'll skip you, Tom. Your vision on how businesses co-create tomorrow. I know with government, I know SAB, you do a lot of that work. What is your vision on co-creating tomorrow with government, society, and all your stakeholders so that we make sure that we have high impact sectors like yourself that have, I mean, the alcohol, everybody's thinking alcohol. I'm trying to, because now I'm thinking you are my member, and I'm thinking. So within the industry, in particular within the alcohol industry, what is your vision of co-creating, making sure such a bad product that is viewed as a bad product but creates impactful programs, creates impactful growth patterns, and make sure that we grow as a country?
Cynthia, I think my vision, personally, I'll say, before wearing my SAB hat, is that we definitely need inclusive growth in this country. If you look at the unemployment, if you look at the slow growth, we need to make sure that we understand the full depth and breadth of where opportunities lie in South Africa. And I think from a business perspective, what we then do become a solve for that. And I think my vision is definitely partnerships that allow us to scale simple solutions so we can reach everyone. If you think of our businesses, our trucks can get to just about anywhere in the world, in this country. So should the impact that we have. So when you think of the farmers, you must look at places in the country that are economically depressed and think of opportunities. One of the projects I'm so passionate about is an initiative we started in 2019. We were importing limes for one of our brands. You have Corona with the wedge of lime, and we said, oh, shucks, there aren't enough limes in South Africa. And when we did find the limes, they were expensive. We found a community in Hoedspruit. They had the land. They wanted to do something meaningful with that piece of land. We found technical partners in the Komati group. They are citrus experts in that province. And then we brought funding. The three of us together as equal partners in this project have now created what is the largest lime exporting project in the country. And that community of Hoedspruit are so proud, and they have so much dignity because they can be included in the economy. And it's not just people in an urban area, they are in the rural areas. If I think of our retailers, we work with 30,000 retailers. And when we talk about inclusive growth for them, it's ensuring that they stay legitimate. We train them in the beer business, in small business development, and we remind them that they sell a legitimate product, and they have to make sure that they fight things like the enemy that could be illicit for us, and how do we ensure that they do the right thing. And inclusion is also young people. If I think of our SAB Foundation, the number of young people that have been touched through the number of apps they want to launch or the businesses they want to touch. Our foundation has been around for 15 years, and majority of the beneficiaries have been young people. So for me, definitely it's inclusive growth, but it's inclusive growth that takes us outside of our comfort zones and really looks to stimulate economic activity, leveraging the value chain that we have, finding tough problems to solve. Import substitution is the problem. Illicit is a problem. Youth unemployment. So those are tough challenges that I think a value chain like ours has a lot of value to add in that area.
Thank you. I mean, that's a big questions that like discussion that we can tag and tap into that. And I want to touch into that, which is going to be totally off script. Tom, where you work in a workplace learning and education, where do you see it in the shifting in the next 2 years? What would be your ideal environment about workplace learning? Because yes, we know that the primary, high school, academia, but we need to really, again, refocus on the workplace learning, which is the reason why CETAs were established. What are your thoughts on that?
I think firstly, let me just share with you what I've read yesterday from the World Bank report related to shortages of skills in Africa. 9 million young people are getting into are looking for opportunities into the market. Only 1.2 million are able to get opportunities. So it tells us that there's a huge issue. And the issue is not necessarily education, because I think we need to separate the two. If you look at South Africa, for example, in literacy rate, we are probably top 4 in Africa in terms of what we produce. Knowledge. I'm talking about people that have got knowledge, not people that have got skills. So then the work of what we do as a CETA is therefore very important in ensuring that we then create, together with schools, by the way, create an environment that we create opportunities for those young people to be skilled. There's a 3-stream system that is coming in the education system, where it provides occupation, trades, and academic. But I can tell you, parents will still, in my view, will still be pushing their young people into the academic streams. And that academic streams is not going to create skills because universities move slowly when in terms of changing curriculum. So what we then need to do is more partnership, like I think Tosi has been indicating. We need more partnership in terms of making sure that the programs that we put out there for young people to get into have got support of the industry through the partnership and the universities and the TVET colleges. So we need to support TVET colleges and ensure that they've got equipment. If you go out and you go into, and that's a call, by the way, to the sector. I've been visiting for the past 6 months, I've been visiting colleges, and the colleges are moving to what is called occupational qualification, which is exactly what everyone has been talking about. You know, the work-based learning is moving into what is called occupational qualifications, where young people needs to be given an opportunity, but there must be equipment if we are going to talk about apprenticeship. Government doesn't have enough money to provide the equipment for TVET colleges so that they can be able to, when we train young people for skills, there's equipment. So a young person is not trained on a Datsun, an old Datsun of 1972.
True. Yeah, we need to be trained on a Telson that is self-driving.
Exactly.
Yes.
So that's for me are the issues that we really need to look at. So there must really be partnership in that particular space. So that's where I'm seeing all of us going to. I've sat in one of the TVET colleges, and I know universities get a lot of donation from private sector. And in one of the TVET colleges where I was a council member, we only got 100,000.
You must think about the why. I'll get back to you on you must think about why they're not. So I don't know if it's what Garrett and I were talking about earlier on, but let's think about that. So sorry to cut you, Tom.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that if it's not working, let's have a conversation. Let's start having a conversation so that we can see that there is an investment, because if you're going into countries where things have been doing well, I mean, I went to Germany in 2021 and I went into a college and there was a new 7 Series provided by BMW so that the learners learn on the new technology so that they are ready to get into the industry. Yeah. So for me, I think that's the most important issue. So where I'm seeing us going to is that we are going to need a lot of partnership and a lot of funding
Collaboration.
and collaboration from private sector.
I'm not sure about funding, but collaboration, partnership, definitely, because we're already paying the levy. So
yeah, the SETA is paying for training, but the SETA does not necessarily, based on the regulations that we have, only 20% of that amount of money can only go into what is called, programs that provides qualifications. Okay, yeah, and then another area where I think we're going to see ourselves going to is to, and I think us as government and everyone else is about this obsession about qualifications. And that's been my lesson over a period of time, that qualification does not translate to skills, competency, and good values in organizations. 2, they don't necessarily assist in organizations in ensuring that people really do what they're supposed to be doing and to support organization in terms of what they're supposed to be doing. So we need to be looking and talking about a question of micro credentialing. How are we moving towards giving what employers by themselves do on their own, which I give them credit for in terms of their own training. How do we recognize those part of training into creating credentials for those that are learning? And also how us from our side where we are regulating, we're ensuring we become a much more agile in moving faster in terms of recognizing those qualifications.
I'm sorry to cut you, Zanele just stood up. Helen, that's just a final. I'm going to ask you different. I know we this one is off the script. We've talked about your passion about women leadership and women passion. Tell us about that, because it's the exciting thing that you're talking about, that women in the workplace have to go through and navigate a number of challenges and opportunities. How do we see those and just embrace them and make sure that we are not missing our opportunities as women?
Sure. Thank you.
Yes.
And I think, as Zintle knows, this is a huge area of passion for me, and somewhere I spend a lot of my time. But I think, as leaders change and as the world of leaders change and the skill set of leaders change, it's becoming more important to embrace diversity. I've seen it throughout my career. I mean, Matsotsi said she's the oldest one. Yeah, I think I'm getting there. I've been in this industry for a long time, and I've worked my way up, and also been exposed to an industry that's been very male dominated, and creating the spaces for women to come through has been difficult. But it's such an opportunity because we see the value of diverse teams. It's been proven over and over and again what diversity brings to the table, not in terms of just the culture that it creates or the space that it creates or the learning and development that it creates, but also the actual financial performances of those organizations or companies that embrace it. So I think, we are becoming more aware of it nowadays. We are looking for the opportunities to accelerate it. But I think we as leaders need to take responsibility for this development and push it and see how we can support women within our organization. And it's not only women at leadership level, it's women throughout the organization. How do we recruit more intentionally, making sure that we're bringing the right skills into the organization? And once you've got them there, I think back to what Tom said, it's not just about education. It's about helping them to learn the softer skills and helping them to learn about operating in environments that they haven't been part of, in the past. So an area where I think we are definitely making progress, but so much more room to move.
Yeah, definitely. Sister, what are the key lessons you want to tell the people that are coming behind you about your leadership journey and the lessons? And what do you want to tell the kids in the township? What do you want to tell the young girls that are coming up about leadership?
For me, what's critical is the partnership, again, between us as leaders and how we partner with the young leaders that are coming through in the organization. And the key, just talking about the issue of women's development program, I think what we're going to have to address as a country, much as we create those opportunities to learn for women, when it's time for opportunities, when it's time for them to get an opportunity to lead, nobody is there. The leaders are not there. The men in the room are not there to make sure that they have opportunities also to lead. But again, you can't throw people into the deep end. You need to make sure that you identify people early enough, those that have got potential, but that are also going to have impact in the organization. And then you need to work with them and ensure that you expose them, you create mentorship opportunities for them, but also train them on the practical things and not only on the theory. Because for one to be able to sit in a room where Gareth is sitting with you and the board and be exposed to that, and just to understand as to what happens in a board. I mean, I remember when I was doing my master's in public administration in Zimbabwe many years ago, I had never been in an office. I was in exile, I had never been in an office, and we're talking about bureaucracy. and we're talking about a memorandum, I thought it was a human being because I had never been exposed. So if you have never been in office and you think you know what happens in an office, so if we don't give the young people in our organization practical skills and expose them to how things are done, we can't then give them the opportunity and think they'll be able to do what needs to be done. So it's to work with them. If we're having a strategy session, invite a few young people and say, come and just observe, because that's part of learning. And we never give those opportunities. We say, it's only for the leaders. Expose the young people so that they can learn, and you must take those that are actually going to impact the organization, that you know that they are not only bright stars, but they always make sure that the room shines where they are, and make sure that they can mingle and mix also with the leaders, because that's part of learning. The issue of practical skills is becoming more and more, even at universities where they don't have practical skills, they actually need to do that to make sure that they get exposed. Even if you're doing a degree, get exposed to how a company is run, and not think when you come there, no, I'm going to be the top dog. I don't want to start at the bottom. Because unfortunately, the entitlement attitude of our young people now, they're impatient, they want to run quickly and be right at the top. We therefore need to make sure that at least early enough, we give them exposure and work with them so that we can manage the expectations, and they should understand as to what does it actually take to get there.
Thanks, Tom. I just want to get into a man's mind, because men walk in the room with the confidence thinking they can do everything when they do not sometimes. So tell us, what is it that are either been fed or been, like, I do not know, because they come from the woman's womb and the embrace. So tell us, what is it that men, what is the psychology of men? Men walk, they think they can do everything, but they can't, and we can. And we don't think that we can do it. So what is this thing that we're not understanding?
I think what we then do in life is that we separate our lives. Okay, so there is a.
So as men, you separate things.
Yes.
Okay.
We separate what we call the home life, how we were brought up by our parents. Okay. And the boardroom and the environment.
And we can't.
You can, and I think where women tend to make a mistake is to be wanting to be men. No. So I'm not necessarily saying everyone, but I'm just saying that wanting to. So for example, and I think I was speaking in the women's colloquium for women, and I said we have to be honest about the fact that men have got certain privileges that women do not have. It's
the truth.
It's the
That's
truth.
why I'm asking the question.
It's the truth. There are certain words that I can say. I can use an F word as a man in a room, and it's okay. But it's probably not acceptable for a woman to do that in the room. And it's where we're coming from. It's an environment where we're coming from. So what then needs to then happen? And I think it's what Totsi has been talking about. It's about the fact that it's about the fact that how then do we assist from a coaching point of view? We coach women how to navigate these environments. Okay, because this talks to diversity, what do you call DEI? Equity and inclusion. We need to be deliberate about how we then help women to then navigate this particular environment. I mean, I've spoken to a lot of men. They say to me, we're not sure what to say. If I've come out of a meeting, I can speak to another man and say to this man, you know what? I'll use an F word in this meeting. And the man will take it as is and would move on. But if I'm speaking to a lady, I'm now afraid. If I say it, how is it going to be looked at? Is it going to be looked at, am I treating this person badly,
Yeah.
whatever the case may be. So I think those are the issues. So as men, I think we are also struggling how to navigate having leadership, lead women or being led by women in those particular environments. So we're struggling with those too. So both of us are struggling and we all need to be assisted in the process.
Okay, thanks. Last one. Zanele, Zoleke. The Gen Zs, I think they, I was in Kenya, they're talking about Gen Zs in Kenya, they did a big disruption and they led a big Gen Zs in Kenya. So in South Africa, your experience, you're the youngest on this, including Zanele, they on this stage. So tell us your thought. How do we make sure that, Toti was talking about it, how do we make sure that they come into the workplace, they understand? I thought I was going to be a manager as well when I was doing I came back and I was like, why am I an administrator? Why am I a clerk? I studied management. I needed to be so how do we make sure that they understand and they have this longevity of sticking things through?
Firstly, I think I'm a pro at Gen Zs. I've got teenage children. I'm humbled by the fact that my son calls me bra all the time. So with young people, I think you must open yourself up to, I am here on the stage, the person that I am, because someone decided to take a bet on me. And the first thing is, I think we need to bet on them. A couple of things I've done is I've hired so many young people on the spot just to give them an opportunity. Secondly, honest feedback. There are a lot to deal with. They bring energy, ideas, lots of feedback both ways, but I think we can also learn. We're in consumer goods. We use them for consumer insights, and I think we also give them our toughest problems, but we help them along the journey. But I think with young people, let's open up our corporate doors, bet on them, but tough love is also required. I think it's so important to ensure we're holding them accountable, and also guiding them. I think there's also a lot of young people in the workplace who get lost, guiding them and also reminding them to be themselves. A lot of people come up to me saying, Zoleka, you're a VP. Sometimes your hair is blue, sometimes it's blonde. And I'm like, I have to be comfortable in my own skin. Yeah. To bring the very best of myself to work. And that's what you must also do. It's not about what you look like and but make sure you're comfortable in your own skin.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much for this panel. And ladies and gentlemen, my panel. Oh, can we have pictures?
We've actually organized, where are the pictures? Over there. Over there. I think we're going down over there because the light is not great up here. Is it fine?
Let's come here. Thank you so much, everybody.
I think the more said about Gen Zs, the not so better. That's if they want to come to work. That's if their mental health needs to be deprioritized for the day by coming to work. That's if you want to demonstrate agility and a different kind of mindset around to what work actually is. And that's if you understand that showing up is actually the work and not the work being the work. So you really have to think differently. I'm glad I wasn't answering the Gen Z question. As you can see, it would have gone completely south. But the conversation was really around redefining tomorrow as leaders. And I'm standing here today and I'm thinking, I've worked here, by the way. I've worked in many places and I've worked here at Vodacom. So my first real job was actually here at Vodacom under Alan Not Craig. And I can tell you that sometimes maybe when we're thinking about the future and who we need to be for the future, we can look back a little bit. And when I think about Alan Not Craig and how courageous of a leader he was, he thought big and he thought wild and he did not. And I suppose it was a time and an era where the cell phones were coming out and it was a different world. You know, we were launching cell phones, we were putting up networks all across the continent. It was an exciting time and it allowed one to think freely and to think big and to think courageously. And maybe sometimes with how long we've been down the journey, we could forget that we need to be having fun. We need to be thinking big. We need to remove the boundaries and the barriers and really just say what is possible. Because guess what? We've done this. Do you remember the Vodacom ads? We've been at this. We've done this. Yebo gogo. It's been done. It can be done, and we can continue to do this. So I'm actually quite inspired because I think we have lots of examples of what good looks like. We got to go back, re-inspire ourselves, and get ourselves moving. And I think it's an executive challenge. So coming on stage is somebody with the chutzpah to take up the baton and have a very interesting conversation around leading with agility. It is a challenge that we need to have now that requires courage and excitement and energy. And Dylan is a managing director for Africa for the Advantage Group. He comes on board with Angelo Swart, the chief executive officer of the SPA Group. The awesome threesome includes Unati Mhlajana, and he's the managing director of Mondelez, South Africa. Gentlemen, in your shapes and sizes, please come up on stage. Not offended, right?
No, it's you got to turn it into I'm space efficient. Apparently that's Darwin in action. Has anyone been following Chet and Colby lately? Okay, have you seen it with the photos with the locks? We're doing one. We are absolutely doing a group selfie, and this is what we're going to need in the background is everyone up for the group selfie. From the back, I need my 2 locks. I'm going to go as the sprinting winger in the front. So up to your seats, please. When do you get to do this? And we're going to obviously send it and tag Cheslin later. I'm going to get just the top of my corporate. That's going to be fun. Yeah, we can do it 2. Yeah, there we go. Okay, well, if you want to take it from there. And I get these hands in the air. For time, you can run up here if you want.
You should have asked Angelo to do
Can I stand on the table?
He's got the right hands.
I have to stand in the middle and on my toes. Wait, there we go. Yeah. Come on, one more. Yay. Well done. Okay, so we have 2 giants in the room, which is wonderful. You got to be able to prop yourself there. That's perfect.
I'll sit here.
There we go.
Go for it.
Okay. So, look, we're talking about agility, right? We know it's been used as a buzzword. We know that this is about the context of how things are shifting so fast, right? Consumer expectations, technology, supply chains, our workforce. We've heard about it just now. But this concept of agility now, for me, is more, it's a survival skill, right? And with that, we've got to think about clarity, adaptability, and importantly, having the guts to lead through uncertainty. And I think that's what's so great about having both of you upstage. You're both steering large entities through pretty uncertain, choppy waters. And you've got to balance legacy, innovation, but still trying to stay ahead without, and this is key for me, without losing sight of what matters. Okay, so I really am keen to explore this with you. We're going to go into this is going to be the second half of the rugby, right? Where there's like 7 tries, so we can do it at speed. But I'm gonna start off, Onati, with yourself, and we know that Mondelez got these iconic brands. You've got this deep consumer loyalty in all aspects of the market, right? How are you managing the stewardship of the legacy brand of the organization, at the same time leaning into innovation and responding to market shifts?
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. And thanks, Dylan, for the question. It's great to be sharing a panel with a customer of mine. So I might place an order while we're sitting here with all these witnesses. Yeah. But yeah, talking about agility, I think for us as Mondelez, we've really been proud of ourselves in our ability to adapt in an ever-changing environment. I mean, for business our size, there's always challenges, and you got to be nimble, you got to be agile in order for you to continue to win in the marketplace. It's not always easy, and when we look at ourselves globally, we always say to ourselves, how do we ensure that we provide the right snacks to the consumers the right way, and then the right quality and so on. So for us, this question of agility, I'll say, is weaved in the way we do things. I mean, whether we're talking supply chain efficiencies, whether we're talking technology, whether we're talking training and development of our people, this is something that we always reflect on. And I think what also makes it interesting is that you can't have a correct strategy in whatever market you serve without having an ability to be agile. So I'll take some of the territories that I look after, from Southern Africa to Central and East Africa. What works in South Africa is not necessarily going to work in East Africa. And what works in East Africa is not necessarily going to work in Central Africa. So then that means we have to, whilst we still delight the consumers and our partners that we are working with across the continent, we have to make sure that we adjust our go-to-market and we adjust our offering to suit those markets and those consumers. And that's the only way we can win, because if we do things only in a fixed way, we're not going to win. And then lastly, I would say, in so doing, we ought to have a very good growth mindset, because every time you go from market to market, you grow as an organization. Because we've seen this, whatever we adopt coming out of the US or coming out of the UK is not necessarily going to be, suitable for Africa always. Therefore, how do we grow as an organization in understanding that we gotta be agile from market to market?
So agility is beyond just local context. It's extrapolating that into different geographies, borders, and being able to still deliver with excellence, but knowing that the needs are different. So Angela, I mean, if we talk about SPA experience and you're leading a significant group here, there is this differentiated kind of decentralized, unique model, which is both a blessing, it's a strength, but also has its challenges. When I was talking to someone earlier, I said, no, we're talking about SPA retailers. I said, no, they're a wholesaler. No, hang on, they're a voluntary buying group. We've got corporate stores, franchise stores. How much does the tail wag the dog sometimes? How do you build an agility in trying to lead this complex organization?
So when I think about agility, I think it's important to start off by knowing who you are. I think agility implies change at speed, and that's really good if you're able to do that. But it only works when you really know who you are. And I think the SPA brand is a complex one, right? So we've got a consumer-facing business or brand that resonates with the customers, physical customers in our stores, and that particular brand is one that lives itself out in public. And ultimately, that brand is really focused on being at the center of the communities we serve. And I spoke a bit earlier about really knowing who you are. And I think in that space, we do know who we are as a brand. And that serves as a guiding light for us. As a brand, we build the brand around independent retailers who live in the communities they serve by and large, and are able to adapt their offerings and be adaptable and agile, I guess, in those markets close to the communities, and are able to customize and personalize those offerings so that they are most appropriate for the markets they serve. At the same time, there's a duality in our model, where as a corporate listed entity, we are a wholesaler. And really internally, we're quite clear on who we are. And so our view of ourselves in the mold of a corporate business is one who has a unique opportunity in a country and a society like South Africa. And fundamentally, what we believe our purpose is to unleash the power of independent retail. SPA was started over 60 years ago in Holland with one really big idea. As chain stores were taking over the European landscape, an individual thought that the only way you could protect individual shopkeepers was getting them to coordinate and to work together and create a wholesaler so that they can compete with the chains. And I think in our mission in South Africa, our view is the same. We can play as a corporate business a unique role in terms of coordinating the actions of independent retailers while allowing them to flourish in an environment against the chains. And I think it's that duality and the comfort we have in that duality that allows us to be agile and allows us to customize at the customer or rock face, while at the same time benefit from the synergies of being a big organization through centralized wholesale.
So, I mean, it's a complex environment that you're leading. And I want to just double click and go into this concept of, we talk about agility, and I like the word you use there. It's also adaptability. What is amazing to have, two sides of the aisle here, two leaders, is it's also humans, right? We talk about these big entities sitting over there, but it's led by people and it's run by people. You have gone through significant transition in the organization over the last couple of years, right? You've had to step back into CEO role. What has been your biggest learning as a leader during this time?
There've been so many. I took over an organization in many ways in crisis, and I think we've been fairly successful at stabilizing the business. I mean, the lessons I've learned as a person, which I'll share if people are interested. But I think as an organization, I think the key thing is that ultimately your purpose matters, and the organization is set up to do a number of things without thinking, and that will carry you for 3 or 6 months. But if your why isn't clear and people don't buy into why you exist and the purpose of that organization and deeply believe and care about that, then it doesn't matter. And in the end, you're going to lose yourself. I think the other big thing, I think as a leader, probably the biggest lesson I've learned is how shiny and attractive complexity is, and how in a world where adaptability and speed matters and there's a significant amount of change, that the tendency towards complexity and is natural, but that the truly good leaders and the good organizations are able to look at the complexity, simplify it, and understand the value behind something rather than be attracted towards the complexity. It's the ability to look at complexity and understand that and interpret it in a way that reveals a simple truth. That is probably the most important leadership role one plays.
I love that. Simple truth is trying to look through this chaos and find that kind of simplicity to get your North Star.
I'm not sure I'd use simple truth. But I'll go with the sentiment. Yeah.
We go with the sentiment. Good call. But Nati, I think I want to pivot to yourself as a leader. You also came into a new organization. I want to ask you to look at that from your learnings, but in terms of getting an organization working together cohesively to essentially serve your customer, the retailers, and then the consumer better. What are your big learnings from that process?
Yeah, I think for me, there were a couple, but I'm just going to mention maybe 3. When you work for a multinational organization and people that don't even understand the continent or potentially don't even understand the country, they see it as one big Africa or one big South Africa, But in actual fact, one of the things that I had to learn is a way to help them navigate that is not true, right? Because if you look at South Africa today, I see it as three South Africas. We have a South Africa that is faced with a poor environment and poor infrastructure and poor setups and people struggling for jobs. I don't have to remind everyone in this room about that. But certainly for our shareholders, you have to remind them that there is this group of people that can't afford certain things. And there is obviously the middle class, and there's obviously the other class. So those three South Africas are the people that we need to continue to serve. Because if you ask anyone, they always say, but the population is 65 million people. Therefore, we should be growing more and selling more and doing more. And I had to learn to, educate the people that are not familiar with our environment. And similarly, when you go outside the borders of South Africa, every country has got its own unique challenges. And talking about agility and talking about leadership in those spaces is taking the role sometimes of having to educate people that are not familiar with this territory, because it's not one size fits all. So that's a major learning that I had to share with many of the people that I work with across the globe. The second one will be the regulatory environment, because the products that we offer and the snacks that we offer are good snacks. I think everyone loves chocolate, right? Particularly Cadbury Dairy Milk and Lunch Bar. So you have to educate that it's not gonna be lifted and just sell it to the country next door, because that country might have certain limitations. Particularly, let's take a country next door like Zimbabwe, where they have got 65% tariff against biscuits, which typically you wouldn't think about if you don't understand the regulatory framework from country to country. And I've got my colleague here who's a specialist in this, and she will always tell us when we're talking about growth ambitions from country to country, remember that this country is not going to allow this kind of product because of these following reasons. So that would be a second learning. How do you look at opportunities but get to learn and educate yourselves as well as your colleagues around the regulatory environment? And I'll say lastly, the other learning for me as a leader was that we are very, very fortunate in South Africa when it comes to infrastructure, because our distribution, as much as sometimes it can be exciting to want to really be on time in full every time across all markets across Africa, it's not always going to be the case, because South Africa has got very good infrastructure and some countries in Africa don't have this. And to learn that from a leadership perspective, it's not one size fits all, will be another third one for me here.
I'm going to ask you another question, Angela. I'm going to come to you, and then we're going to go to the audience for any questions. If you prep yourself, please. Let's go down a level. All right. So that management leadership level, which is a broad-based, multinational organization. Let's go down to the human level internally, and we talk about building an agile organization, which is an ongoing challenge, right? What are the kind of leadership skills, capabilities that you are finding are crucial in your teams and trying to instill in your teams to set yourself up for success? And let's talk about in your South African market.
Yeah, I think in the South African market, the skill set that we're trying to drive very, very hard evolves around digitalization. I think if you look at where the world is going, take a market like India, for an example, you can get a product between 15 minutes to 30 minutes delivered in your doorstep. So the question is, how do we do that through digitalization in South Africa? We don't have the answers, but we need to co-create these solutions with our retailers. We have to find out how best do models evolve in making sure that, whatever you experience in a first world country or second world country or emerging market, you can certainly experience in South Africa. And keeping in mind what I said earlier about three South Africas, because it might be easy in the urban environment, but how do you do the same in the rural areas? And this is where now digital and technology comes in and really challenge our thinking and in terms of what sort of skills are we going to impart to our people to make sure that they are ready for those things, because the business of tomorrow requires organizations that not only do things the way that made them successful yesterday, but things that are going to help them succeed in the near future. And digitization and technology is at the center of that. So that for me is a key skill set.
I love that. So let's not continue doing what we've always doing. Let's lean into it differently, even though we might not sure where it's going. And I love your other word that you brought up is the co-creation with the ecosystem, with the partners. I'm going to take a slightly, it's a similar but slightly different role, a question here, Angela, around technology and the kind of evolution of technology. We know that there were challenges with the RP SAP rollout. How is SPAR looking at leveraging technology to enable agility in the organization? And what does that future look like for you?
So I'm a passionate believer that one shouldn't have technology for technology's sake. Technology can solve many problems, and digitization is key to that. As an organization, we were far behind, and we're investing significantly in terms of digitizing our business. I think similar to what Unati said. I have noted that South Africa's infrastructure means we can get deliveries in full on time.
Absolutely.
So bank that one. So you can place the order.
I can place my order.
You can place the order.
Great.
So I think from my perspective, one needs to look at what you're trying to tackle first, the problem you're trying to tackle, rather than look at the technology as the ultimate solution. I think that Unati mentioned India, and if you look at some of the informal delivery systems, super complex, not enabled digitally at all, where people get hot lunches at the workplace. I'm sure you would have seen the system, right? So technology just in and of itself is not the right answer. I think what we need to fundamentally understand is what the solutions are we trying to solve. And the number of places that SPAR is looking at adapting technology. One, to benefit the consumers. I think that's the easy, or not the easy part, but it's the one where finding those solutions are simplest. I think I agree. We live in a very complex society, and if we look at it at a macro level, we really live in 2 or 3 South Africas, depending on whether you count the Western Cape as part of the country or not. But the reality is, the world is moving into a complexity. As I said, everything tends towards complexity. And where we are right now is customers don't want to be